Good morning, and thank you for joining us here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. My name is Eugene Daniel, joined in studio by producer Sarah Calloway, right across from me here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. We're going to start today's show going right to a Senate hearing taking place with the top immigration officials in our country. Earlier this week, we showed you the moments in which these officials spoke before the House, and now they are speaking before the Senate. All of this as we are really close to that deadline tomorrow for House and Senate lawmakers to reach a deal on funding for the Department of Homeland Security. This also comes just moments after this morning. Tom Homan, the border czar for our country, announced that they will be ending the operation in Minneapolis soon. We'll have more on that later on. But for right now, let's go to this live hearing taking place in Washington, D.C.
His arrest and removal from Minnesota, when in fact, Mr. Aleem was released directly to ICE on May 1st of 2025 from the Department of Corrections. And so this misinformation, I think, makes it much more challenging for law enforcement. And I think it's so contrary to the way it has historically been in terms of collaboration. And, you know, this is one of the challenges I think we face.
Thank you. You also talked in your testimony about trust, saying, quote, "The erosion of trust between DHS and Minnesota is at the core of this crisis, and I suspect we will feel its repercussions for years to come." This is an incredibly important point. The greatest responsibility a government has is keeping its citizens safe. But that can't come at the cost of freedom and liberty. These things all have to work together, or you lose the trust of your citizens. And all across our country, and in my state of New Hampshire, law enforcement and communities work together in this way to work to be safe. So having lived this experience, what do you see as some of the repercussions of this loss of trust, and what can we do to rebuild it?
Senator, I think it happens here with this, and we'll start with this committee and with Congress taking, some clear action to address and rebuild the legitimacy and trust in ICE. And we want to be clear, there is a legitimate need for immigration enforcement and for addressing those people who represent, in particular, a threat to public safety. But I think what we want is to return to the days where there is close collaboration, as you described, where we can focus on key issues of community and public safety across our country, things like transnational large-scale drug efforts, as well as human trafficking. These are really important issues that there has been longstanding collaboration, and I worry that because of what's happening today, those efforts will be lost, or we will not invest the kinds of resources that are needed in those areas.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess one last question. I come from a small state, but we have 234 cities and towns. And some of our police departments are a few officers. Our larger cities have, many more than that. But can you talk about the realistic need to cooperate and plan when you have limited resources? It sounds to me that some of what the administration is asking the state of Minnesota or the community of Minneapolis to do is turn over its entire police force to ICE to do their work, and then drawing them away from investigating state crimes, which is, of course, incredibly important. Can you just talk about that for a second?
Senator, Minneapolis, like many communities across the country, have limited resources and have profound need on the policing front. And so it has to be targeted and focused on the needs of those communities and diverting this away. In fact, we can go back and look at the President's task force on 21st century policing from 2015, just 11 years ago, that really focused on the need for there to be an effort, but the decoupling of immigration enforcement from local law enforcement. And that doesn't mean that there isn't collaboration, and we need to focus on the right kinds of targets, but it does speak to the fact that local law enforcement has a role, as does federal immigration efforts. And I think recognizing the differences there does become critically important. And, law enforcement agencies across the state want to work together, need to work together, but there also has to be appropriate focus on the needs of a particular community, large or small.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Langford.
Chair Paul, thank you. Thank you all for coming here in the conversations. I do want to bring a couple of things here. One is news for those of y'all that are here on the panel you probably have not seen yet, that Tom Homan has announced that they are standing down Operation Metro Surge in a press conference during this time period. He also announced that they have had 4,000 total arrests of folks that are undocumented in Operation Metro Surge, and have identified over 3,300 children that were unaccompanied minors that we didn't know their whereabouts. They were lost during the last administration, that those kids were also identified as far as where they are. We have some kids that have been lost into labor trafficking and all kinds of things on it. They've done that. So there is some news that's happening. I also want to be able to correct the record on a couple of things I've heard just even in conversation today. This number of 14% of the folks have a criminal record that ICE has detained is actually not an accurate number. That number is 14% of violent criminals. That's murders and rapes. 70% of the folks that are arrested nationwide have a criminal record. And so it's interesting that I guess there's some folks that don't see as important to arresting folks with 5 DUIs or that are drug dealers or robbery. They're just interested in getting murderers and rapists out. But I would say for most people in my state, if they have a criminal record, they're interested in those folks being removed from the country. So 70% of the folks have been arrested nationwide by ICE in the past year do have a criminal record of some point, not 14%. Attorney General Ellison, you and I served together in the House years ago together, so we've known each other a long time on it. You made a comment earlier about me trying to be able to work to be able to solve things. During the Biden administration, I made it very, very clear, I'll work with anybody that will stop the chaos that was happening at our border during that time period. At the time I was working with the Biden administration and trying to find a solution, we had 12,000 people a day that were illegally crossing our border, a day. Almost none of them had any background checks at all. We literally had no idea who they were, and we had 70,000 people that even the Biden administration identified as special interest aliens coming from areas of known terrorism, but we didn't know who they were. 70,000 just in 2024. So you are correct. I was willing to work with anyone to try to make that stop because it was absolutely out of control. I look at what's happening in Minnesota, and it's been a great conversation to try to just figure out things. ICE did a surge in New Orleans. This didn't happen. ICE did a surge in North Carolina. This didn't happen. When I look at my state and other states and the cooperation, there are right now about 1,200 jurisdictions in the country that have a 287G agreement with the federal government on honoring detainers and working to be able to partner together. There's 1,400 total agreements of some kind of memorandum of understanding with ICE and with local law enforcement across the country. But what I'm hearing from you is in Minnesota, a 287G would not be allowed according to state law. What's the cooperation? How many 287 agreements are there in Minnesota at this point?
Yeah, so the position that my office has taken is that if you are a sheriff who wants to pursue 287G, you must have the support of your county board under the Joint Powers Agreement. It's just a restatement of what the law is.
So how many agreements are like that?
I think 7 is the last number I heard, but there's no barrier. We're not saying that people can't do 287G agreements. We're saying that there is a procedure that they have to follow that involves engaging with their county board. That's all.
So I guess my challenge is, if there's someone arrested in Minnesota, let's say they've got 3 DUIs and they're arrested and they're incarcerated, and it comes up and pings in the records that this person also has a murder warrant in Oklahoma, would they be held until Oklahoma authorities came to get them at that point, or would they, at the end of whatever the term, be released? If Oklahoma reached out and said, hey, we want that person, I know you're prosecuting them, but before you release them, we want them, don't let go of them until we get there, what would happen in that situation?
I'm confident that Minnesota would honor Oklahoma's request.
Okay, how is that different in other places with ICE detainers? So if ICE reaches out and says, hey, this person's not legally present in the country, a court has already ruled they have a final order of removal, they need to be removed, would they be held until ICE gets there?
If there is a final order of removal.
Right.
Then Mr. Schneller would be the best person to answer the question, but the answer is, yeah, ICE will be notified, those people are going to be picked up. Those people are being picked up. And Senator, again, I did appreciate the work that you were doing on immigration, and I want to be clear that I think we need to return to that level of bipartisan cooperation, and I hope that you can continue in that direction. But one of my problems is that a lot of the reasons that the federal administration's giving for targeting Minnesota aren't justified based on the law.
Right, but
So-
I guess my first question is, if someone has a final order of removal from an
Right.
immigration court, should they be removed?
Yes,
Okay, so then the argument from ICE is that sometimes they do a detainer, and by the time they got there, they've been released already. They're not actually there. Is that occurring?
well, I
Because
can,
I would say if Oklahoma contacts Minnesota and says, hold them till we get there, or if ICE contacts them and says, hold them till we get there, what's the difference?
if it is if somebody's been convicted of a felony, that person is going to be, there will be questioning as to what their nationality is. That information will be reported to ICE. Now, under a case which is based on federal and state law in Minnesota called Esparza versus Nobles County, if the person's not convicted of anything and there's an ICE detainer that's there, then ICE has to get them because they cannot be held beyond the time that the
Right.
state have legitimate reason
But the
to
question
hold
is,
them.
are they notified in enough time for ICE to be able to get there? Because ICE's statement is, hey, we're going to get there as quick as we can, but it takes 2 agents to come pick somebody up if they're already being detained. It takes 8 agents to go get them if they're on the street somewhere. So their desire is, hey, if you've got somebody, even if they haven't been convicted, they've just been arrested, but they do have a final order of removal, ICE is going to contact and say, hey, I want to do this. And Shaniska was just saying before that a stat of 8% of ICE detainers being honored. I want to ask you about that.
So if we're talking about a final order of removal, somebody who's in Minnesota state custody, I'm confident that these people are being picked up. If there is no final order of removal, if there's no felony conviction, if the person is still pre-trial, then it would be a rearrest and a detention from the state of Minnesota if we were to continue to hold them beyond Minnesota's authority to hold them. So we cannot just say we're going to hold you because ICE wants you if it's a non-felony situation
All right, we'll
where
follow-
there's no conviction.
I'm past my time. We'll follow up with the ICE agents in a little bit and get a chance to
I
get
think it's
clarification.
a great subject and hits on sort of the point. And I think if you were to issue a statement saying that final orders will be obeyed by every county and every municipality and every police department, that final orders would be obeyed, including a final order that we now have a final order, and the guy that lives at this address, you'll send the Minneapolis police with the ICE agents to that house. Would you issue that order?
That's already the law.
Well, I think nobody's cooperating and nobody believes there's an amount of cooperation. So I think issuing that order or issue a public statement. Would you issue a public statement that reiterates the law that with final orders you do? And then it brings up the other problem. Maybe we need more final orders and maybe ICE needs to be told to go to court and get final orders and then that you will comply with that. But I think they need to be told from you that you will actually comply if that is the distinction, that you don't like detainers because they're not a final court order and that you will obey final court orders. I think the people of America and the people of Minneapolis would do better, Minnesota, to hear from you that you will obey final orders. And then we have to figure out how come we don't have enough final orders and how come we haven't adjudicated these things. And then we're isolating in on the problem.
Senator, I have and will state Minnesota law clearly as many times as I need to, but I just want to be clear, that's not why we're here. We're here because of other political considerations, not because of something Minnesota is doing wrong.
I think that's sidestepping the issue. Senator Kim?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the three of you for coming out. Attorney General, I wanted to start with you.
Okay, we need to take a quick break here on Live Impact News, but you're listening to the Senate hearing currently. That is Attorney General Keith Ellison of Minnesota, who is answering questions of the Senate regarding immigration here in our country, but particularly with everything that's been going on in Minneapolis. Really good line of questioning back and forth there on the partnership and interactions between Minnesota officials and ICE and federal officials, and the ways in which there appears to be there appears to be some issues there when it comes to whether or not the two sides are on the same page in detaining individuals there within the state. Again, all of this coming as Tom Homan did announce just about 30 or so minutes ago that they will be ramping down the operations there in Minneapolis. Again, we're going to have more on that. We rolled on that press conference. We'll share it later. But for right now, we need to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. Okay, we're back here for Live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. A lot of things happening at this moment, but we're going to go back to that hearing in the Senate with top immigration officials. But right now, actually, they're questioning Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. And so we'll go back to this at the moment and hear what they're saying live.
Have disapproved of ICE, and it seems like they're saying ICE has gone too far. That's not just falling on partisan lines, is it, Attorney General? It seems like it's across the board.
There's a well-known conservative podcaster. His name is Michael Broadcorp. He's written, this guy's a conservative. He's nobody's liberal, right? He's a conservative. It is a broad-based objection that Minnesotans are making. Now, not everyone, of course, but but whether from the left to the center to the right, people are very disturbed by the engagement that they've been receiving from ICE officials and Border Patrol agents.
So despite the fact that the surge looks like it's ending and going back down, I think we can all say that damage has been done. There is also no admission of wrongdoing or wrongdoing of tactics by this administration, and it bodes questions about what comes next, not just for Minnesota, but where else are these agents going to go next? I think also part of this gets to what does it take to heal? What is it going to take to help the people of Minnesota heal? And Attorney General, you talked about just the lack of an independent investigation here. Is that something that would be important for the people of Minnesota to know that there is a true independent investigation that involves state and local participation?
Yes, Senator. I know that there's a diversity of views on this esteemed committee, but I would hope that all would agree that we need transparency in terms of the activities of ICE, transparency in terms of the conditions of detention facilities, access to those facilities, a full, fair, and joint investigation into the deaths of Good and Preddy, and into the masking. Nobody in this committee has police officers who run around wearing masks. I'm certain that Senator Paul, Kentucky police officers and state troopers don't wear masks. We cannot impose on people what we would not accept for ourselves and then call ourselves fair. And finally, I want to just encourage Senator Lankford to continue his work on comprehensive immigration reform.
Mr. Schnell, I wanted to turn to you because some of what Holman said, and I know you didn't have privy to see his what he said today announced, but he said that part of the reason why they're able to end the surge is now that there's a willingness on state and local to be able to cooperate. But what your testimony said today sounded like you were already willing to cooperate, but that also that they weren't reaching out, that they weren't providing the efforts to be able to share their targets and whatnot. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Senator, I think, I think if there is a positive of Mr. Holman being dispatched to Minnesota, has been at least efforts to have discussions with local officials, efforts to try and gain a level of discipline among the agents that were dispatched to the state. Those things have been, I think, very, very positive. And yet, I think we still see, some lack of cooperation. I've had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Holman and have positive conversations, and yet I think some of the struggles have been information sharing is an ongoing issue. We have provided information to them around the people in our custody who are non-citizens and who do not have detainers yet, and there's about 100 of them. And so we want to make sure that there is full accountability. And so, we're pleased.
And also stopping some of the misinformation that was put out there as well.
100%.
Yeah. With that, I'll yield back.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ellison, let me start with you. You're the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Do I have that correct? That's a yes?
Sir, you're aware of my job. You know the answer to that.
You're not going to answer my questions? Are we going to start this way? Are you the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, yes or no?
You know the answer.
Mr. Ellison, you're in my courtroom now. You're under oath. So I suggest that you answer my questions. You the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of Minnesota, yes or no? Let's try another question. Are you familiar with the $9 billion in historic fraud out of your state, including the $250 million in the Feeding Our Future program alone? You familiar with that? Don't turn to the pages in your book to get your potted answers. Are you familiar with it? Yes or no?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
Very familiar, aren't you? Because the people who ran the Feeding Our Futures program came to you in your official office in the state capitol December 11th, 2021, and asked for your help in getting investigators off their backs. They complained to you for upwards of an hour about state investigators going after them, and they begged you to help them, and you agreed to it, amazingly. And we know you did.
That's not
because
true.
It's all caught on tape.
Yeah,
Every single sentence is caught on tape. Here's what you said. Let's take a look.
Obviously, you didn't
You
listen
said,
to the
it's not a
tape.
question. You said to them, send me the names of all these folks who are investigating them. You said to them, send me their names. And I'll take that list, and I'll call the person over at Education who is investigating them and say, what's going on? Why am I getting these complaints? Then he went on to say, I already have my team working on this. What day should we get together to discuss it again? You made pledge after pledge to them. You said, we've got to make sure this guy who's investigating them stops it. You said, you have my attention. I'm concerned about this. You said, let's go fight these people, meaning the people who were investigating the fraud. Why'd you do it? Why'd you help them?
Are you going to let me answer?
Please, we're all ears.
So first of all, you're cherry picking quotes out of there.
Why did you help them?
I thought you were going to let me answer.
Why did you
Are you
help
going to let
them?
me answer?
Why did you help
You
them?
let me answer and I'll answer you.
Tell the truth and I'll let you answer.
I will tell the truth.
Good.
Let's do that.
That'd be a nice change. Why'd you help them?
Now see, Mr. Chairman, I didn't come here to be insulted. I came here voluntarily.
You came here for the truth. Let's
I
have
came
it.
here- I
Why
didn't
did
come
you
here
help
vol- I
them? The
came here
quotes are
voluntarily.
here. They're
Now
in
look,
black and white, and every
yeah,
member of this audience
and they're
can
cherry-
listen to the
and they're-
recording. It's 54 minutes long. It's
you-
all in public.
does-
You can Google it right now and listen
Right,
to it.
and listen to it
Why'd you
all.
help them?
First of all, I didn't help them.
You did help
No,
them.
I did not. I certainly didn't.
You're saying you didn't do anything for them. You didn't.
Well, wait a minute.
I already have my team working on this again. That's not you?
I have
It's a ventriloquist?
my team assisted with the information that led to the prosecution and conviction of these
No,
people.
you didn't. You didn't lift
Yes,
a finger
we
to
did.
prosecute him. No, you did not.
No,
You didn't
because
lift a finger
it
to
was a
prosecute
federal
him. You had,
prosecution.
BS. You had
Okay,
whistleblowers
but
come to you as early as 2019.
You're the one talking BS.
Hey, listen, it's my
You're the
time.
one who doesn't know what you're talking about,
Oh,
sir.
no, sir. You
You're the
now have
one
encountered the truth and you
cherry-picking
don't like it.
quotes.
Why'd you take their
You're the
money?
one taking their
Why'd you
money.
take their money?
I didn't.
You took
No, that's a false statement.
$10,000.
No, that's a false statement. That is a false
$10,000
statement.
9 days after the meeting.
False statement.
You took $10,000. Here's what
Untrue.
happened. They went to your office.
That's a
They
false
solicited
statement.
money from
They
you.
did
They
not come to
solicited
my
help
office.
from you.
That's also wrong.
They came to your office.
No,
It
they
was your
didn't.
official office. You
No, they
met with them
didn't.
for 54 minutes.
No, they didn't.
asked you for help. You pledged it to them, and they talked repeatedly about money. In fact, it's all they talked
That's
about.
a lie.
Money, 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 money. They
True.
said, we
Untrue.
will put our dollars in the right place. We will support candidates that will fight to protect our interests. You replied, that's right. They said, if you are
that is
secure in
not
your
true.
donor base and secure in your power base, you can act the way you want. You replied, money is freedom. They said the amount of money circulating, I'm reading the transcript, the amount of money circulating in our community
misreading the
today is powerful, and we haven't realizing it in a meaningful way. And you said, give me the specifics. And 9 days later, you took $10,000
that's a lie.
from people who were then indicted. It's in your reports. Why'd you do it?
Sir,
Was it worth it?
You know what? This is a theatrical performance.
10,000. This is the truth.
It
This is
has
what
nothing to
accountability looks
do-
like, of which you've had
No,
none.
no, the
You
fact-
helped fraudsters defraud your
Lie.
state and this government of $9
Sir,
billion, and
sir,
you got a
this is-
fat campaign contribution out of it.
This is
You ought to be
completely
indicted.
untrue. Well, there's
That's the truth.
I think we've made the point. Let's keep the tenor
Well,
just a
for the
little more
record,
calm.
Oh, I'll ask how I want
He's
to, Senator
lying,
Paul.
and that's the truth.
Oh, no, this is all on the record,
no, sir.
Did you bother
You are-
Did you bother to investigate where the money that you facilitated their fraud for, where it went? Do you know where it went, what it was used for, the fraudulent money? I do, because we just heard testimony about it yesterday.
Because we
the
were
funds
key
went
players
to
in the
hundreds of millions of
investigation.
dollars to terrorist
Yes, we
groups,
do
to
know.
transnational criminal organizations, to the drug trade, to drug trafficking, to child trafficking. And you took $10,000
That's a lie.
and helped them do it. You know, the
is
other
an
thing is,
untrue statement.
whistleblowers came to you as early as 2019. Let's look. As early as
This is
2019,
this is a-
whistleblower. Don't talk over me.
No,
as
no,
early
you're
as
talking over me.
2019, it's my hearing, pal. As early as
I'm not your pal.
2019,
Don't call me pal.
whistleblowers came to. Well, I should call you prisoner because you ought to be in jail.
Well, we'll see what you can
In
do about it.
2019, whistleblowers came to you in your office and referred to you fraud allegations from Feeding Our Futures, and you blew them off. Listen, your own state newspaper
That's a lie.
investigated it. The Minnesota Star Tribune, the Partners in Nutrition, brought its concerns to the Attorney General's office in 2018 and in 2019, and you did nothing. You did nothing for years. The only action you took is,
false statement.
once all these fraudsters came to your office
It is a
and asked
false
you to get involved
statement.
and offered you money,
Did not come to
then
my
you got
office.
involved.
They
Then
did
you
not-
took the money, and then you got involved.
They did not come to my office. You're completely wrong about that.
You met with
I
them
did
for
not take anybody's
54
money.
minutes, and you took $10,000, and they also gave your family money. They gave your family thousands of dollars in campaign contributions in addition to what they gave
a false
you.
statement.
Let's put the
This is, this is completely untrue.
the New York Post.
Yeah, we know the New York Post.
Minnesota Keith Ellison, AG, accepted campaign donations from individuals linked to the $250 million COVID fraud scheme after they were in your office.
Not-
the donations came on December 20th.
Sir,
you
this
met
is
with them
not-
on December the 11th, and on January 20th, the FBI knocked over their headquarters.
No.
That's the sequence of events here.
No, it's not.
You've
the
been
sequence
right
of
at the
events.
center of this fraud
not
thing
the
from the
sequence of
beginning,
events.
and
It's
you've
untrue.
enabled it. And sir,
The false
you
statement-
should resign.
And sir, you should
should
resign. I
resign.
was thinking the same thing about you.
Should resign.
You,
Thank you,
I was
Mr.
thinking
Chairman.
the exact same thing about you.
I'm sure after encountering this
yeah.
truth, you are, because it hurts to have accountability, doesn't it?
Because after this parade
It
of
hurts to have
lies and
accountability.
presentation,
Time has
I think you should be
expired.
ashamed for misrepresentation.
Time has expired. Senator Moreno.
Fireworks have started there in this hearing. Again, this is a Senate hearing looking into the situation that's happened not only in Minneapolis, but immigration in general within our country. That is the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, taking questions there from Senator Hawley. Again, we need to take a quick break. We're going to have much more from this. We're going to come right back to in about 2 minutes. Okay, we are back here with live Impact News on 13 News Now Plus. Just to kind of set the stage for you, there are a few things going on right now. We just saw that right now also in Washington, D.C., there's a Senate hearing. The last report coming from the NTSB on that deadly midair collision between a commercial plane and the military helicopter last year in D.C. That is underway right now. We're going to get to that too. But we are going to stick with this Senate Homeland Security committee hearing that is happening at the moment. Again, we've seen some already tense moments between some of the senators and that man right there, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. This just an hour or so after we have learned that the Trump administration will be pulling back the big operation in Minneapolis for Homeland Security there. So let's go ahead and go back to this hearing while we monitor the other situations taking place.
Information, we need to complete an investigation.
And the denial of information raises the issue of what is happening to that evidence. We know, having tried cases, that presenting it in court involves establishing a chain of custody, so as to show there was no tampering with the evidence, which is critical in crimes like the ones that allegedly were committed in the alleged murders of Preddy and Good. That kind of chain of custody, the preservation of the integrity of the evidence, is critical to any prosecution or conviction. And I'm really concerned that the failure to provide this evidence or to attest to chain of custody, in effect, amounts to a cover-up.
You know, a lot of Minnesotans have used that word, Senator, and I hope that we can, my biggest hope is we can move on from here. I think everybody who's ever done police investigation, crime investigation, knows that there is a state interest and a federal interest. That's why collaboration is the norm. And I think that most people know that that information has got to be shared with everybody who has an interest in establishing truth in public safety. The fact that we haven't been doing it in this situation, I'm hoping that with the help of this committee, with the help of Mr. Holman perhaps, that we're going to get into a better place. But so far, we've been denied. And it's deeply disappointing because, as you know, anytime somebody is killed in your state, I mean, along its distinguished career in Connecticut, you know that that leaves a massive hole in community, and to simply not investigate it, say there's nothing to see here. We've heard from the second most important official at DOJ that they're not going to investigate the Renee Good case, that they are not going to investigate at all. And I would hope that this committee would say, no, we do expect that when Minnesotans or anybody of any state is killed, particularly in connection with the officer-involved matter, that there will be an investigation. And it'll be fair, and it'll be thorough, and it'll be joint. And then whatever the results are what the results are. But the fact that they're not going to investigate, and local officials in large numbers have quit because of the conduct of the recent conduct of the DOJ, this is all deeply disturbing, and I hope we can turn the corner.
I appreciate the measured and insightful tone that you are bringing and the message of hope. You've used that term a number of times. The people of Minnesota deserve hope that things will now change, and I hope that they will. I think the nation hopes that they will. But in the meantime, the failure to investigate the Good killing, and in fact, I believe that the investigation is focused on Renee Good's family.
That's right.
Insofar as there is any investigation, it's of her sister and possibly her family. I find absolutely abhorrent and incomprehensible. So I think there is a need for real reform in the Department of Homeland Security, which we are endeavoring to do, as you know, with common sense, restraints, and far-reaching overhaul of this agency that right now is out of control and needs to be reined in. But in the focus on this action in Minneapolis, I hope professionalism such as you brought to this effort will prevail. And again, my thanks to you and Mr. Schnell and Mr. Niska for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you. Mr. Niska, I'll start with you. Just a basic question, just to kind of level set. We can have the three of you just answer decently quickly. Do you think that people who are here in this country illegally, meaning they either entered illegally or overstayed a visa, should be deported? Yes, simple yes or no.
The rule of law, yes.
Mr. Ellison?
Do they have an asylum petition pending?
You get your microphone.
If they have a pending asylum petition, I think it should be heard. If they have some basis for their presence in the country, I think ordinary due process should take place.
Yeah, it's just from my perspective, simple. I'm not a big shot lawyer like you. Just a quick question. If you enter the country illegally or you overstay a visa, should you be deported?
My simple answer is, sir, it depends.
Okay, so if somebody breaks into your home, should they be arrested for breaking and entering, or does it depend?
It's an entirely different scenario.
How's that?
Because immigration is essentially a civil, and the breaking into my home is a criminal matter.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So if there's laws that should be enforced, so we shouldn't enforce civil violations?
We absolutely should enforce them.
But you just said that it's a civil matter, so it's different. So if somebody
you enforce
creates
civil matters.
So if somebody commits a civil infraction, it shouldn't be enforced?
It should be.
Okay, so they should be deported.
No, they should have due process that is associated with their petition. So,
Okay,
for example,
so the act of entering the country illegally, you think we should say, well, did you really do it or not do it? It's pretty obvious that they did, right?
well, I mean, it would depend on the facts of the situation, and then they might say,
I just gave you the facts. They
Right, but-
entered the country without permission.
but Senator, what if they had a good faith basis to say they would be persecuted in their home country and subjected to real oppression there? Under international law, there are provisions for them to make a case.
That's a phenomenal point. Mexico and Canada, do you consider those to be safe countries or no?
Generally, I do, but there are certain
generally you do?
Well, I mean, I would just say this.
You border Canada. Don't insult your neighbors to the north.
No, I love my neighbors to the
Okay,
north,
well,
but
so
I
is it
will,
a generally safe country?
generally, yes.
So then
But-
somebody seeking asylum could certainly be safe in Canada and Mexico, no?
Now, so like, if somebody, we do know that in Mexico, which is another country I truly admire and think is a wonderful country, but there have been cases of persecution, people who have legitimate
So people
fear.
aren't safe in Mexico? Refugees cannot be safe in Mexico?
Some might not be. And I think, and
So
what I'm saying,
maybe
Senator,
we shouldn't have a free trade agreement with them then.
I didn't say that, but what I would say, Senator, is that we should hear their petition. We
Gotcha.
should at least hear it out. We should say, is there a well-founded and legitimate fear of persecution in your home
That
country?
can't happen in Mexico?
Well, I think that she should just follow the international protocols that existed. And
It is, which is that you seek asylum in your nearest country that you are seeking asylum in. But it sounds to me that your answer is no. Mr. Schnell?
Senator, if I were to answer yes or no, it would be misleading. And I think ultimately it does boil down to due process.
It actually is pretty staggering that the easiest question that I could possibly ask is confusing for the two of you. I mean, that's decently disgusting, and I'm going to tell you why from my perspective. I wasn't born in this country. My mom and dad had to follow the rules to bring me and my 6 siblings into the United States, and I find it disgusting that the two of you guys want to reward people who skip the line, pay drug cartel members to smuggle them across the border, are coached to say exactly the right words when they hit Border Patrol. And by the way, the people who do that, the people who are from my neck of the woods, from South and Latin America, get abused, get raped, get held at gunpoint because people like you say, oh, it's okay, maybe we'll allow them into the country, when we should have a very simple policy, which is you can't enter our country illegally and you can't overstay your visa. The fact that the two of you are top law enforcement people in your state and you can't simply say, hey, violating a civil or criminal offense is a problem, is probably the origin of why we have these issues. Let's move on for something else. Mr. Ellison, as the Attorney General of the state of Ohio, I'm sorry, the state of Minnesota, you would never get elected in Ohio. Who's Victoria Harwell? Because you haven't said her name. I'm just curious who she is.
is there a question you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, who is she?
As I understand it, she's a very unfortunate, tragic victim of a crime.
Okay, and what have you done about it?
Well, in Minnesota, sir, I prosecute crimes that are.
What have you done for Victoria?
I'm telling you about my jurisdiction.
I'm just telling you what you've done for
No,
Victoria Harwell.
I'm telling you about my
No,
jurisdiction.
but I didn't ask you a question about your jurisdiction. If I
has to-
did, you could answer that one, but I haven't. So just tell me about Victoria Harwell. Just tell me what maybe the answer is nothing, which is fine. Just tell me what you've done for Victoria Harwell.
We have done everything that the law allows us to do.
Okay. And she's an American citizen, right?
I assume so, yes.
You haven't even bothered to look into who she is?
No, sir. What I'm telling you is that I don't know, what her nationality is. It doesn't mean I don't know anything. It means I don't know that.
Well, thank you for your concern for the Harwell family. It's obviously pretty sad that the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota has not even bothered to understand who she is. You haven't mentioned her in her testimony, but you certainly know who Renee Good and Alex Preddy are.
I do.
Yeah, so obviously your priorities are clearly obvious. Tell me about Temple Israel. What happened there?
Well, my dear friend of mine is the
That would be
rabbi,
the answer to
lead
your question
rabbi at Temple
could
Israel.
Could you just answer my question, please?
Well, a lot of things happen there. Do you have something in mind you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, any particular incidents happen of
Well,
anti-Semitism?
there have been acts of anti-Semitism there.
What have you done about it?
Of which I oppose vigorously. We've supported local law enforcement in doing the right thing in those communities. Let me tell you, you're asking me about a place I know a lot about. I've been to Temple Israel an untold number of times, and so if they ever have any security concerns, that is a concern of mine.
And
Absolutely.
so what have you actually done differently to help fight anti-Semitism in Minnesota?
I speak against anti-Semitism. I condemn it as repugnant and wrong.
Let's pause there. You speak against anti-Semitism. Will you condemn Louis Farrakhan's comments saying that Judaism is a dirty religion?
You know, sir, I thought I was coming here to talk about immigration
that was
policy.
a layup question, by the way.
No. I thought I was talking about immigration policy. I didn't know that we were going to be talking about all these matters. I'm reluctant to just sort of. We already had one thing where we didn't mention immigration policy at all. I'm fine with you asking about questions around asylum and things like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. But now we're going off in all kind of different directions. I think there should be some scope to this hearing. And so thank you for your interest, and we both share a need to condemn anti-Semitism.
A few of my colleagues have gone over time, Mr. Chairman. So I find it disgusting that we would have a witness who's the Attorney General of a state that will not condemn the fact that somebody said that Judaism is a dirty religion. The fact that we have a witness of that low caliber here before the United States Congress is an insult to this institution.
I'd like to put a finer point on one of the things you asked too, because the responses were that they say, well, due process hadn't been completed. Let's say due process is completed, there is a final order, but the person isn't accused of any crime. Their only crime is being in the country illegally, as Senator Moreno did. Mr. Schnell, would you advise the Minneapolis police to assist in a final order? Their only crime is that they're in the country illegally.
Senator, if there is a judicial order, absolutely, we should comply.
Attorney General Ellison.
Certainly.
Okay, see, I think that's unclear. Not maybe from Mr. Schnell's point of view, but I think from the edicts and things coming down, I don't think it is clear. People have the feeling that you don't want any cooperation with ICE on someone who's here in the country illegally. So I think as we look at this, if we only say, if we're Democrats and we only say, oh, it's ICE, 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 and we don't say, well, that the cooperation had anything to do with it, and I'm not saying it justifies any kind of bad behavior, but I really haven't gotten the feeling, and I know it's been contentious, but I haven't gotten the feeling that you're willing to accept some responsibility for the lack of cooperation escalating this problem.
Can I respond, Senator? Before Operation Metro Surge, ICE was operating, legally and in a cooperative way in the state of Minnesota. People may not like the way they were operating, but they were operating legally and with cooperation. It is this dramatic escalation that has caused so much problem. And so you're recommending that I try to be more clear. I will certainly take that to heart, sir, but this surge is, in fact, a very serious issue.
And it's not without criticism. I'm just saying that there is the sense in the country and in Minnesota that you wouldn't want, that you're so opposed to deporting someone just for deporting them that you don't want anybody to enforce it, that you don't want the police to be involved with this. And so I think it is necessary, if you do believe the police should cooperate, to say publicly the police of Minneapolis will cooperate, and it's going to be the way we're going to get to less ICE here, by having 10 police officers go with one ICE agent to arrest people, but that you're for that. And I can't tell you what to say. I'm just saying I want less tensions. I don't want more people to be, unjustifiably injured or killed. So it's a thought. And I'm sorry I interrupted Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses for being here today to testify on government oversight. So while I won't be focusing on ICE and all of those issues, those are significant issues, I do focus on a lot of issues that come down to fraud within the federal government. So again, want to thank you all for being here. Really appreciate your time. So I'll set the stage. We have a lot of families like mine that live in Iowa, Minnesota. I come from a blue-collar working family, a farm family. My parents farmed, they worked very hard. Their parents ahead of them worked very hard to get where we are today. I'm very privileged to sit in this seat today. My sister works for a trucking company. She and her husband farm. My brother is a blue-collar labor union worker for the railroad. Every one of their tax dollars needs to be protected because they work darn hard in all types of weather. They work outside. They don't have the privilege of sitting in a cushy office working 9 to 5. But what we have found in the federal government through years and years of the work that I have done on oversight is that 1 out of every $10 that Americans send to the federal government is squandered away and lost in fraud. 1 out of every $10. So there's no time to waste in giving Americans peace of mind about how We use their hard-earned dollars. We have seen examples like the Equality Learning Center in Minnesota recently, but this is happening in every single state. It's not just Minnesota, it is every single state. And accordingly, Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit my Squeal Award to Minnesota Governor Walz for the state's massive fraud ring for the record. I'm putting
Without
together
objection.
thank you. I'm putting together a package of pragmatic, bipartisan proposals because I have friends on the other side of the aisle that see this as a massive scam against the American public. They see this and they want to deal with it. They want to prevent waste from ever occurring again. For too long, Congress has pretended to search for who is actually responsible for the amount of fraud and waste in programs after those funds have already gone out to the states and localities. It's almost like a problem Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang might face. So right here, folks, well, the mystery is solved. Congress is responsible. By allowing weak incentives for states and localities to police spending after those grant funds are dispersed, fraud is able to increase more easily, and it's harder to recoup improperly used taxpayer dollars. So, Representative Niska, too often the federal government writes a check and then looks the other way. How should Congress redesign incentives to ensure states have real skin in the game and safeguards taxpayer dollars once those funds have left Washington, D.C.?
Well, thank you, Senator. And you're absolutely right that people respond to incentives, and especially immoral people respond to incentives. And unfortunately, we've had both in federal programs, but especially the way the Walz administration and Attorney General Ellison have overseen those programs in Minnesota, we have seen an enormous loss of our important taxpayer dollars. We should be tightening up eligibility requirements, making sure that states and local governments are actually going out and checking on whether meals are being served. The Feeding Our Future fraud scandal that we heard about was a situation where there were sites that were supposedly feeding kids where nobody could have fed them. And if Minnesota officials, including Attorney General Ellison's office, which was involved in litigation at that time, had just gone out and checked, they would have been able to find those problems. The problem is that Attorney General Ellison has fought to cover up the records from closed investigative files. He's fought in the courts and the legislature to amend our Sunshine Law so that he doesn't have to disclose what happened in those investigations, and that needs to change as well. But absolutely, the federal government needs to be overseeing our taxpayer dollars and making sure that states who are administering those programs are doing it better than Minnesota has done. It's been a complete failure.
Yes, thank you. And Attorney General Ellison, under your watch, unfortunately, Minnesota has achieved the largest COVID fraud scheme in American history. Under your watch, those whistleblowers who brought attention to the fraud and waste in your state faced retaliation. Under your watch, billions of tax dollars intended for unemployment insurance, supporting hungry children, just as described, children with autism, providing housing for the most vulnerable, keeping small businesses afloat through COVID, and more were instead, all of those dollars were funneled away into fraudulent schemes. So last month in an interview with CNN, you were asked if your office has done enough to stop the fraud. And you responded, "Of course we've done enough." And this is a quote, "Of course we've done enough. And we're doing more every single day. This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing." Those are your words.
Yeah.
How do I go back to my hardworking brother and my hardworking sister and every other American who's going out there and then sending their taxpayer dollars to Washington, D.C., only to have it squandered away in fraud? How
Again, you've been watching a live Senate hearing there with top immigration and border officials, including what you're hearing a lot from are questions from the senators towards the Minnesota Attorney General, Keith Ellison. We're going to take a break here for a few minutes, and we'll be right back with more live Impact News. And on the other side of this, I will be giving up the chair here to Marta Berglund, who will take you through the rest of this broadcast. Again, her alongside producer Sarah Calloway. We'll be right back.
Well, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News on this Thursday. I am not Eugene. I am Marta Berglund. I'm filling in for him. He had to run out the door. So we're going to get to the latest news that's ongoing right now, that's live happening right now. We're also going to have the latest look at your weather forecast with meteorologist Hunter Forst in just a moment. But really quick, just want to preview what we may touch on over the next hour here. We've got a few live hearings that are happening across the United States. So the top box you see, that is in Minnesota, where Governor Tim Walz is set to hold a press conference. We expect him to come up in a few minutes. And then the bottom box that you're looking at is also related to Minnesota and immigration enforcement just in general across the country. The Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has been testifying. So we may check in with each of those events over the next half an hour or so. But first, we want to get the latest on the forecast with meteorologist Hunter Forst. Okay, Hunter, last time I was on Live Impact News, it was weather chaos. It was right before the first winter storm.
Got it.
So I'm feeling chill today.
And luckily, no winter storms on the horizon.
Thank goodness.
Marta. So let's give a round of applause for that, especially since we're coming up on Valentine's Day.
Yes, it's that time.
Do you guys have any special plans?
Sarah?
I'm actually going to dinner tonight.
Oh.
Instead of on Saturday, because, you know, I feel like it's going to be really crowded
Busy.
on Saturday.
Yeah. That's a good
We're
idea.
excited.
We're getting Indian food. I'm not really a Valentine's Day person, though.
That's true. You were just telling me that.
But I'm engaged now, so I have to walk the walk, I guess.
That's so true. But luckily, things are going to be looking good on Valentine's Day and tonight for you, Sarah. Dry weather. But it is going to be chilly but warmer on Valentine's Day. But outside right now, things are looking good here in Hampton Roads. We have plenty of sunshine. Temperatures are cooler, though, especially compared to this time yesterday, by about 6 to even 15 degrees cooler than about 24 hours ago. We're only in the upper 30s now in Norfolk, 39 degrees. It's 40 in Virginia Beach, 43 in Hampton, 44 in Newport News. It's 42 in Suffolk, Elizabeth City, and 42 down in Chesapeake. But Suffolk, you guys are 15 degrees cooler than this time yesterday. But satellite and radar, nice and dry, and we're going to stay dry for the next couple of days. Our next weather maker is going to be rolling through on Sunday. So we are clear for the next couple of days, and we don't have to worry about snow. Here is a look at our afternoon here. A few clouds rolling in this afternoon, mid to upper 40s, a little bit cooler off towards the north in the low 40s, but we stay dry this evening, dropping into the mid to low 30s. And then by our Friday morning, it is a sunny start to the day. To end off the work week, we'll be in the low 30s in the morning. By the afternoon, we only stay in the upper 30s to low 40s. So it's going to be a cold day here in the area, and then by Friday night, if you have any plans, you drop down into the low 30s, but sky staying nice and clear, and then we're going to see a switch in the wind direction heading into our Saturday. They're going to be more out of the south and west, so that's a warmer air. It brings up some warmer air for us here, and we'll be starting off the day Saturday already in the mid to upper 30s, and then by the afternoon, Valentine's Day, if you're stepping out, mid-50s, a good amount of sunshine. So from the morning into the afternoon and Saturday evening, so anytime you have plans, it's going to be great weather. But things will change heading into our Sunday. Going to see some rain moving on in, especially by late morning into the afternoon. I think if you have any early morning plans, things should be fine here. But definitely by the afternoon, that's when we're going to see some rain rolling on in, but it's beneficial rain. We certainly need it here. So here's a look at our futurecast. This is Sunday morning. You'll notice at 8 o'clock, it's cloudy but dry. This is the European model. So compared to yesterday, it does have it moving in a bit later, which is good if you have any plans in the morning. Here we are at 2 o'clock. That's when we start to see some lighter rain moving in, especially for our western areas, but widespread rain heading into the late afternoon and evening. And that's going to linger into Monday morning. So you could see a few scattered showers heading off to work on Monday, but then that clears out and we're good by the afternoon. But here's a look at what we could see in terms of that rainfall potential. Anywhere from 1 to 2 inches across the entire area. And that is great because we are in a moderate drought for a lot of the area here. In that lighter tannish color, seeing some moderate droughts from the peninsulas down into the south side and eastern North Carolina. And then you have a severe drought up around Lynchburg, Farmville, South Boston, Rocky Mount, Raleigh, all included in that severe drought. So it's not just beneficial for us here in Hampton Roads, but for all of Virginia and all of North Carolina as well. Now, as we take a look at the wind gust potential, last weekend we had a storm rolling in, brought us some precipitation, but it was also really windy on top of it. But it's not looking like it's going to be as windy as that past system. We could see gusts, 20 to 30 miles per hour heading into our Monday morning, but that's really about it. So not expecting to be as windy as last week. And then we see those gusts coming down a bit heading into our Monday evening. But as we take a look here at our 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, by the end of February, it's looking like things are going to be getting warmer. So mid to upper 50s, low 60s possible. Finally getting out of this cold kind of pattern that we've been in. So things are certainly changing on the horizon. Here's a look at the day today once again. We'll be in the mid 40s here in Norfolk, 51 in Franklin, 44 in Virginia Beach. It's going to be 42 in Matthews, 39 in Cape Charles, 46 in Williamsburg, 45 in Hampton, 50 down in Hertford, 52 in Ahoskie, 41 degrees in Manio this afternoon. Overnight tonight, it's going to be chilly, mid to upper 20s, winds out of the north at about 5 to 10 miles an hour. And then as we take a look at the day tomorrow, plenty of sunshine to end off the work week. Great, but cold, upper 30s to low 40s. And here's a look at our 7-day forecast. Sunny the next couple of days. Valentine's Day, mid-50s, sunshine, going to be a great day for any outdoor activities. And then rain moves in on Sunday. And then we see those temperatures warming up a bit by the middle of next week. Could hit 60 degrees. I'm ready for it.
I laughed when you said it's going to be chilly tomorrow because it's going to be 41. Do you remember when we were like hooting and hollering when it first went above freezing? What was that, last week?
Yeah. Now
it's all about perspective.
Now we're all getting like we had 50s for 2 days this week, and now we're like,
ooh, it's 40.
It felt so good that now we're like, oh no, now it's back to the 40s. But yeah, that's true. I remember walking out maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think it literally was 40 degrees outside, and I was like,
it's summer.
I'm like, it's so warm outside.
Do you think there's a possibility, this is just me asking because I'm curious, of like a second winter wave?
I hope not. But
I feel like that happened last year, right?
There is always a possibility getting into March.
Yeah, I feel like March there's always a sneaky snow.
Yeah.
When was the big snow last year?
I believe that was February.
Okay.
So we're getting past it.
Like, that's my litmus
but
test.
But Sarah's right. March can be pretty sneaky.
Okay.
It could be super hot, or it could still be super, super cold.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, it sounds like Valentine's Day is going to be great.
Yes.
So thank you, Hunter. And then good to hear we're going to get some rain.
Yeah.
When we need it.
Certainly do. And at least it's on Sunday. So if you did a lot on Valentine's Day, you could kind of hang out inside on Sunday.
You can relax.
And just relax. Some good food, good
And
movie.
it won't be snow.
And it won't be snow.
And that's all that matters. All right. Well, thank you, Hunter. We appreciate you coming
Thank you.
in and chatting with us this afternoon. All right, so we've got a few things we're watching right now live on our different receivers this morning. We still have an NTSB hearing ongoing in the Senate about the DC plane crash. We've got Governor Tim Walz. You can see him in that top box. We will continue to watch that. And then the hearing we were watching about immigration enforcement with the Minnesota Attorney General, Keith Ellison, that did just wrap up. So we're going to go through all of those topics in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to take a break. So stick with us. All right, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. As we said a few minutes ago, we're watching a number of live events. Big news of the day is that border czar Tom Homan announced that ICE operations are going to be scaled back in Minneapolis after more than 4,000 people were arrested. We are live right now with Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, and we imagine that's what he's going to be addressing right now, those comments and the plans going forward. So let's go to him live and see what he has to say.
Their stuff, book a plane, move on. I would volunteer. We will help you get to the airport. We will clear the roads to get you to the airport. I will come over and pack your damn bags if that's what it takes. But I think it does answer the question. And again, this is a trust but verify. I am skeptically optimistic. I have no reason to not believe that when Tom Homan said they will be gone almost immediately. So it'd be my expectation, I think, you know, certainly by the middle of next week, this is back to the 150. So yeah. Yeah. I think, and I'm trying to look, I don't know all the details because it's not what a executive branch should do to interfere with an independent judicial branch. And so as far as the BCA goes, they do what they need to do, and it was my understanding we were very close to a joint agreement, and then at least what we're hearing is that was pulled back, and this is somewhat a speculation, but it's how I'm viewing it, just to be candid with all of you, that the federal government pulled back because there was a leak before they could announce it. So I think we all have to be really careful. This is like a fourth grade game of who gets last hit type of thing. This administration always has to get the last word. This administration always has to be viewed that they won. And in this case, I think they understand they have got to do a joint investigation. So it is my expectations we will get a joint investigation. I would hope that this surge leaving and at least that piece being off, because that's one of the three demands that we will have to see here. This was getting rid of the surge, independent investigation, and then stop the attack on our state government agencies. So as I know right now is we were very close. I think obviously there's a contingent inside the FBI and the federal government that understands the only way you do these is through a joint investigation. And it's very clear, and again, if anybody in the administration or outside of Minnesota thinks because this surge that they're leaving, that somehow everything's okay and we've forgotten about this, the folks who are out there asking for this are going to turn their attention to these other things now. And so my hope is, and it could go a long ways, is we get an announcement in the near term. Again, we're only asking for what's always been done. We're only asking for the right thing, and we're only asking for what is the core of who we are. Justice needs to be served. And I don't know. I do not know. We saw yesterday the federal government putting a ton of effort into trying to indict 6 members of Congress, the House and Senate, and a grand jury said, are you out of your minds, and threw those out. So what we need is, we need what's left of a decimated U.S. Attorney's Office here to get back to the work of stopping drug trafficking, stopping crime that's there, helping us on fraud investigations, and then getting us this investigation. So nothing further yet, but I think the framework is in place, and it's just a matter of them feeling like they have an upper hand to announce it, and I hope that would happen soon. Yeah. Go ahead. Nothing has changed. The final agreement is that Minnesota would continue to do what we do, which is law enforcement, honor, those things, and that we would do what has always been expected and has done for decades here, is if there's someone who is in a Minnesota prison and there is an ICE asking us to hold them, once their sentence is served, we notify ICE and turn them over. And that has, in every single case, you've done the investigative work, that's what's happened. So nothing has been changed. They continued to ask me. One of their demands is that I asked people to be peaceful in their protesting. That's an easy thing for me to do because that's what I said. But I'm not going to ask them to not be on the streets. I'm not going to ask them to give up their constitutional, their First Amendment rights, their Second Amendment rights, their Fourth Amendment rights, and for the state, the 10th Amendment rights. So what I've been telling you is This is exactly what we've been doing. And when I went to Congress 2 months ago and testified for 8 hours, as they incorrectly said Minnesota is not adhering to this, I testified for 8 hours. Nothing came out of that, and yet they came here. So I think to tell people, we're just going to follow the law. And when it comes to this, no one's disagreeing that you shouldn't have immigration enforcement. But it should be with due process, and everybody gets that. And it certainly should be done humanely. And you certainly, if you're truly going to focus on the worst of the worst, why are you going after our neighbors who are in the system, following the law, trying to reach naturalization? That doesn't make any sense. So Minnesota's doing what we did, but I'll tell you what, it steeled our resolve of how much we're going to protect our immigrant community. It steeled our resolve that we will do what we should do, they should do their job, and it's become very apparent to the people of America that this is not the way to do it. This is not the way to go about it. This doesn't make us any safer. And so with that, so yeah, go ahead.
Any updates in progress on the flow of federal dollars to state agencies, state programs, that sort of thing?
No, not. Thank you for the question. And this question about the flow of federal dollars, and and you saw this. I think you saw it yesterday in the hearing on Capitol Hill on the Epstein files. Each of these agency heads, and I mean that is certainly troubling in that about the non-independence of the branch of the AG's office, law enforcement. But each of these cabinet secretaries wanted to please their boss so much, they just came to Minnesota and piled things onto us, piled in data requests, piled in letters, threatened to withhold money, threatened to do all of this. Those are the things that are doing immense damage at a time when we're going to need that. And I remind people of this. Minnesota contributes more than we get from the federal government. When it came time to look at things like a scale on how solid and lack of corruption in state government, Minnesota ranks in the top 5 best states. All of the things about running things and doing it right, we follow the law, we do it right, we provide more federal dollars. And in my opinion, this unallotment around what Congress has appropriated and what the law says Minnesota should get, the president is arbitrarily, and his cabinet secretaries are arbitrarily holding that money. So back to this first question to end on, this about what DHS reform should do. We are pushing our congressional allies, and I would think the Republicans in this, before any deal is made with DHS funding, all of them need to quit this assault of, and again, I will use the president's word, retribution against Minnesota. Not because we have more undocumented people, not because of any reason other than he decided that this is a state they would try and make an example of. And look, I'm treading a pretty fine line here. He picked the wrong state to make an example of. And that is where things set today. So we'll see over the next few days. We are in a trust but verify phase. My word to Minnesota is, again, we're certainly not going to celebrate something that should have never happened. But I will say this, please keep, at this point in time, stay hyper vigilant. I'm afraid over these next few days with some of these folks leaving that the potential for an incident like we saw up here near the cathedral with this chase yesterday, what we don't need is some horrific thing happening on the way out. But I will say, as we started on this in the hours after the murder of Renee, is express your constitutional rights, stand up for your neighbors, speak out when you need to speak out, do so peacefully, because as I said then, and every one of you proved the fact is, at the end of the day, that will win out. That is the way a democracy should function, and it seemed like a long ways from that January day that we would get to a point where they would say, we're leaving. But today is about a lot of destruction over those weeks, a lot of damage, a lot of trust has been eroded. A lot, as I said, we've got children that a core memory for them will be their classmate being taken away. And that will stick with them the rest of their lives. And my hope is what sticks with them is human decency wins out, rule of law matters, that arc of the moral universe is bending towards justice, and we are under no illusions that it will magically happen itself. All of what we're talking about today was put onto Minnesota, and it was Minnesota citizens, I'll say it again, nameless, faceless folks who endured whatever it took to make a difference. So our work is beginning here. We'll do the recovery, encouraging the legislative leaders to get ready for a recovery session. And my certainly on this is back these proposals and let's get this money to these businesses and get back to normal. Thanks, folks.
Thank you all. It's okay. I'm ready. All right, that was Minnesota Governor Tim Walz speaking to the press. And of course, that comes in the wake of U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan announcing that immigration enforcement in Minneapolis will be scaled back over the coming days and weeks. I just want to recap a few things that Governor Walz said before we take a quick break. So he mentioned 3 separate demands, or I guess you could say, or requests of the Trump administration, emphasizing that this announcement that immigration enforcement is leaving does not mean all is forgotten. It does not mean everything's okay from Minnesota state government standpoint. So he said, you know, we want to end the surge of ICE agents in the state. I think that's looking like it's going to happen with this scale back of enforcement. But also, in addition, he said we want an independent investigation into the shootings that took place and took the life of Renee Good and also Alex Preddy. Then he also added he wants a stop of the attacks on what he says are attacks on independent agencies in the state of Minnesota. So we could see ICE's presence in Minnesota and Minneapolis specifically dramatically scaled back over the next week or two. Of course, we'll continue to watch that. I also want to mention, he said, you know, we don't want border enforcement not to happen. He said, we just want it to be done with due process and humanity. He also said, we're only asking for what's always been done. So some points that Governor Tim Walz made during that press conference today. And of course, that is in response to Border Czar Tom Homan's earlier press conference that happened this morning. So we're going to check that out. Sarah, do we need to take a break first? Okay, we're going to take a break. Stay with us for the next 2 minutes, and we'll have those comments from Tom Homan that triggered Governor Walz's presser just a few minutes ago. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus, or if you're joining us on YouTube, thank you for streaming with us today. If you're just tuning in, before the break, we were listening to a press conference from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz addressing the comments made by border czar Tom Homan earlier this morning. So Homan announced that immigration or ICE enforcement around Minneapolis will be dramatically scaled back. And that's after the AP reports more than 4,000 arrests during this time period. Of course, it's been a very, very controversial few weeks. We had 2 fatal shootings involving federal agents and ICE. So we're going to go back. We want some additional context to Governor Tim Walz's remarks. So we're going to go back and listen to the initial announcement from border czar Tom Homan on the ending of this operation. Okay, we're going to have that for you in just a moment. We're having some minor technical difficulties, but I do want to mention just a few notes before we do get into this press conference from Tom Homan. He did mention, and he probably will mention this in just a few seconds once we get it ready to go, the immigration enforcement in general is not going to end, but the Minnesota operation specifically is over. Of course, since the shooting deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, there have been widespread protests across Minneapolis and across the country. So it definitely has shown a spotlight on Minneapolis and Minnesota in general. We do have those comments ready to go. Let's give it another try.
Good morning. I'm Tom Homan, border czar of President Trump. I'm going to read a statement real quick. Then after I read the statement, I'll take questions. I'm here with Sam Molson, Director of ICE and Enforcement Mover Operations for the St. Paul Field Office, Stephen Schrank, Acting Special Agent in charge for ICE Homeland Security Investigations, and Chris Kuhn, Deputy Chief Patrol Agent for the United States Border Patrol. I'm very pleased to report that this search operation and our work here with state and local officials to improve coordination and achieve mutual goals, as well as our efforts to address issues of concern here on the ground, have yielded the successful results we have came here for. The Twin Cities and Minnesota in general are and will continue to be much safer for the communities here because of what we have accomplished under President Trump's leadership. I previously shared with you before I got here. Before I even got here, I met with, I said I was going to meet with the governor, the AG, and the Mayor Fry, Mayor Herr, and I've done all of that. I've also met with various police chiefs and sheriffs. And one thing we all had in common was the importance of ensuring and maintaining public safety. Overall, we made a lot of progress through extensive engagement, meeting with them and other key stakeholders. And it is expected that those engagements and discussions will continue going forward in order to enhance exchange of information and more coordination. As a result of this surge operation, we have greatly reduced the number of targets for enforcement action. And many criminal aliens have been arrested and taken off the streets, including murderers, sex offenders, national security threats, gang members, and other violent criminals. Just this week, ICE arrested a criminal alien with criminal convictions for rape, acts with a child under 14 years of age with force, lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14. ICE also arrested 2 criminal aliens with criminal sexual misconduct convictions, among other violent criminals. Through targeted enforcement operations based on reasonable suspicion and prioritizing safety and security, ICE will continue to identify, arrest, and remove illegal aliens that pose a risk to public safety, like we've done for years. And our officers will carry out their duties with professionalism, integrity, and compassion, like we've done for years. We will enforce the immigration law against all persons in the United States illegally. I want to say something about the various unfounded complaints I'm hearing about ICE enforcement operations. During the surge operation, ICE has not arrested anybody inside a hospital. We have not arrested anybody inside of a school, an elementary school. We have not arrested anybody inside a church. As a matter of fact, the only ones that disrespected the sanctuary of a church were the agitators that have been arrested and prosecuted, and so far we have 9 of them. However, those locations are not off the table. I said from day one, there's no sanctuary for a significant public safety threat or national security threat. But as far as those stories about ICE going into churches, arresting people in hospitals, it simply has not happened. And if you have a case where it happened, you let me know. Because all the digging I've done there, I can't find a single one. Under President Trump's direction, we have obtained an unprecedented level of coordination with law enforcement officials that is focused on promoting public safety across the entire state. While I don't agree with Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellis on everything, I appreciate the support the governor gives to state agencies who coordinate with us in a manner intended to promote public safety. And I appreciate the AG having an open dialogue with me. Early on, the first meeting I had, acknowledging that county jails may notify ICE of the release date of an inmate, just as long as they don't hold them past the time they would normally release them. We now have the ability to arrest criminal aliens in the safety and security of jails throughout the state at the time they're being released, like we've done in other states. I've also directed the strategic placement of officers in certain areas throughout the states that can respond quickly to sheriffs that want to release somebody and notify us. We need to be nearby so they don't hold them unnecessarily. So we worked on a strategic plan to reassign officers in those key locations. Arresting a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is safer for the alien, it's safer for the officer, and safer for the community. I think we all can agree on that. It requires less resources for at-large operations. It just makes sense. I'll say it again, as I've said many times, we are not asking local law enforcement to act as immigration officers. I don't want them to be immigration officers. We're the immigration officers. We just want them to be cops. We're asking law enforcement to coordinate with other law enforcement to help keep public safety risks out of the communities. We have also strengthened our existing coordination with the state to target and take custody of criminal aliens more efficiently and effectively. As a result of our efforts here, Minnesota is now less of a sanctuary state for criminals. And we are proud of the public safety threats we have removed from the criminal aliens out of the state. As I said in my first press conference a couple weeks ago, President Trump didn't send me here because the operations were being run and conducted perfectly. I came here to identify issues and implement solutions to improve our mission execution. Since that time, in order to improve target enforcement operation, I and my team here, we made personnel changes. We integrated BP with the ICE teams. We established a single unified chain of command structure. We strengthened joint intelligence and targeting capabilities. We deployed body cameras. We increased the footprint of internal affairs. We commuted zero tolerance for misconduct. President Trump also deployed me here to work with state and local officials to de-escalate the intense, volatile reactions and conflicts that have unfolded on the streets here between federal law enforcement and unlawful agitators. While working to course correct and improve how enforcement operations are being run and executed here, and even before I was sent up here, I've been saying over and over that forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, or interfering with a federal law enforcement officer is a crime in violation of USC 111. It's not okay and will not be tolerated. Zero tolerance if you cross that line and put hands on a ICE officer. Not only is such activity unlawful, it is dangerous, and sadly we have seen tragic consequences, as well as adverse impacts on businesses and the communities here in the city. While the Trump administration supports everyone's First Amendment right to freedom of speech and assembly and to petition, it has to be done lawfully and peacefully. Because we will not tolerate unlawful actions committed by agitators who are just causing havoc. This is not the way to express your disagreement or try to reform federal laws. Go talk to your members of Congress if you want the laws changed in this country. Nor is doxing federal law enforcement personnel and their families, it's just not right. Enough is enough with this misguided, reckless, and shameful behavior. We don't want to see any more bloodshed. I don't want to see any more bloodshed. I pray every night for the safety of our law enforcement personnel and the safety of those in the community, whether you're here legally or illegally. I don't want to see anybody harmed. If you break the law, we're going to arrest you. We have already arrested more than 200 people for violations of USC 111. The U.S. Attorney's Office has already accepted many for prosecutions, and some are still pending. I have also received commitments from state and local law enforcement that they will respond if federal law enforcement is being impeded or assaulted. They will shut down unlawful agitator activity, including arresting agitators involved and seeing them follow through. And we're seeing them follow through on those commitments. We've seen this past weekend that the state and local law enforcement have taken actions when it comes to public safety. And bless them for doing that. Since I have been here, I've repeatedly emphasized that the unlawful and violent agitator activity is unacceptable and must wind down as a condition for further drawdown of law enforcement personnel. I cannot remove law enforcement personnel while violence poses serious risk to our officers. I will not leave my officers in that position. It is worth knowing that in all my meetings and discussions since I got here, I've not heard one federal, state, local law enforcement, or judicial official, nor any member of the business or faith communities that I met with, say that ICE is an illegitimate agency that doesn't have a real mission. Quite the opposite. All I've heard is the acknowledgement that federal immigration laws passed by Congress do exist, and ICE has a legitimate responsibility to enforce those laws. ICE is a legitimate federal law enforcement agency. We're not out scouring the streets to disappear people or deny people their civil rights or due process. In addition to taking public safety threats off the street, ICE here in this state have located 3,364 missing unaccompanied alien children. Children that the last administration lost and weren't even looking for. That's because the leadership of President Trump, these children were located. As part of the de-escalation efforts, I have called on state and local officials these past few weeks to tone down the rhetoric and denounce unlawful activities being conducted by the agitators. We don't have to agree on everything, and we definitely do not. But we all agree that the lawlessness and chaos and disruption that is occurring on the street needs to end. I want to thank Governor Walz for his messages focusing on peace and his support for the Minnesota State Troopers to respond to unlawful situations that put federal officers and the public at risk. I also want to thank Mayor Frey for taking a public stance against agitators setting up barricades that block streets and endanger public safety, and for directing the police to take those roadblocks down. Additionally, I want to thank Police Chief O'Hara, Sheriff Witt, and various other local law enforcement for their responsiveness and efforts to maintain law and order in the streets. We've seen a big change here in the last couple of weeks, and it's all good changes. I'm also pleased to report that we're seeing a notable decrease on unlawful agitator activity here in Minneapolis and overall throughout the state. This is great news for Minnesota communities that have been adversely impacted by the lawlessness and chaos on the street. We have what we call here QRFs, Quick Response Force, security teams that get called out when ICE officers are out doing operations. They get into trouble if agitators get out of control. If there's a danger and public safety is at risk, these QRFs respond to help these officers get off the X and get out of that situation. I asked today when I got here, I want to know what the QRFs call outs are, what their deployments are. I want to know every time a QRF is called out. The QRF deployments have dropped dramatically because we have less of that occurring, less of the agitator that cross that line. That is a good thing. That is a win for everybody, not just for the safety of law enforcement officers. It's a win for this community. With that, and success that has been made arresting public safety threats and other priorities since this surge operation began, as well as the unprecedented levels of coordination we have obtained from state officials and local law enforcement, I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue to the next week. We have a lot of work to do across this country to remove public safety risk who shouldn't even be in this country, and to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation. Law enforcement officers drawn down from this surge operation will either return to the duty stations or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that. We will continue to enforce Title VIII immigration law throughout this nation. Prioritizing national security threats and public safety risks makes sense. But I'll continue to say over and over again, if you are here in the country legally, you're not exempt from our immigration laws. If we encounter you, we'll take appropriate enforcement action. For those that say we are backing down from immigration enforcement or the promise of mass deportations, you are simply wrong. Look at the data. Record number of arrests and deportations under President Trump's first year. And we'll continue that effort. Prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats doesn't mean we'll forget about everybody else. We will take action on everybody else. That's just a stone cold fact. A small footprint of personnel will remain for a period of time to close out and transition full command and control back to the field office, as well as to ensure agitator activity continues to decline, and that state and local law enforcement continue to respond to ensure officer and community safety. Additionally, federal government personnel assigned to conduct criminal investigation into the agitators, as well as the personnel assigned here for the fraud investigations, will remain in place until their work is done.
All right, again, that is Border Czar Tom Homan addressing the end of the ICE surge or ICE enforcement surge in Minnesota. So again, they estimate by next week things will really start to draw back in the Twin Cities. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. It certainly has been a controversial past few weeks throughout Minnesota. We're still watching the live hearing in the Senate over the DCA plane crash. That hearing is ongoing with the NTSB. We're going to hear more on that in just a few minutes, but first we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. All right, we continue here on Live Impact News this Thursday morning with the latest from the Senate Commerce Committee, holding a hearing right now on that DCA plane crash that happened just over a year ago and killed 67 people. So right now we're hearing from NTSB Chairwoman Jennifer Homendy on the latest on that investigation. She may look familiar to you. She's been very, very passionate about this crash, saying it could have been prevented. She's even said, you know, I'm angry and you should be angry too over this incident that happened back in late January of last year. So let's hear the latest on what she's saying, what she recommends to prevent a further incident like this.
I guess request GAO, Inspector General, constant oversight on the Department of Transportation and the FAA in particular.
Yes.
Thank you again.
And on DOTIG, one thing I will say, sometimes they don't get access to their data systems. That's something you should chat with them about because they aren't getting the data. They're relying on people giving them the data.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Senator Cruz, and thank you, Chairwoman. Not only do you bring this incredible expertise, you know I've always been a supporter of yours, but you also bring the passion and the anger that I know so many of the families and the loved ones in this room are feeling over what happened. I want to thank your dedicated NTSB staff for all of their hard work. And I want to acknowledge the 67 people who lost their lives, including Wendy Jo Schaefer, a mom of 2 from Mahtomedi, Minnesota. So this committee, as you noted, has worked in a bipartisan fashion to advance the Rotor Act. And I thank the chairman and the ranking member for their work on this, as well as Senator Moran and Senator Duckworth. So my questions are, first of all, on air traffic control staffing. We have a shortage of air traffic controllers. Former Senator Braun and I pushed to address staffing shortages by requiring the FAA to conduct maximum hiring of air traffic controllers. While in the number of the staff at the time in the tower, as you've noted in the report, was adequate and in accordance with FAA directives, the facility was staffed below its target level. How can lower staffing levels impact controller performance and awareness? Has the FAA increased staffing at DCA to mitigate some of the issues raised today?
So it staff. We didn't find a concern with staffing on that day, as you noted, but it does impact safety because it impacts their workload. In this case, you can see 2 people should have been on position, 1 on helicopter control, 1 on local control. And what happened was the local controller was doing 2 jobs. People were in the tower and on staff and available, but he was forced to do 2 jobs and handling between 7 and 12 aircraft. What I will say as far as staffing today, there are staffing challenges, and that is a significant impact on safety. They are authorized at DCA to have pretty high numbers, but they're not at those numbers. On January 6th, right before our board meeting, we checked the numbers at DCA. There's authorized numbers, but then you have to ask any day what's operational. Who's out, who's on medical leave, who's on military leave. It was lower than it was on January 29th.
Okay, thank you. The NTSB report showed that the flight path for helicopter Route 4 comes within 75 feet of the approach to runway 33, and that video was chilling to watch. Are there any circumstances in which 75 feet of vertical separation is safe?
Absolutely not. Not safe anywhere in our airspace.
The FAA is required to annually review these helicopter flight routes. Who was tasked with reviewing helicopter routes, and why hadn't this risk been identified previously?
I'm only laughing a little bit because it's so sad, because DCA has existed since 1940s. Runway 33, 1940s. Traffic certainly has changed, but helicopter Route 4 has been there since 1986. FAA is required to do an annual review of those routes. Not a single annual review was done. Not a single one. In fact, They couldn't, at first, when we asked who was responsible for doing those annual
Right,
reviews.
I think we asked NTSB or FAA. Have they been able to identify who has that role?
They did finally tell us who it was. It was like a terminal operations director, but nobody knows who specifically that is.
And do you know if they've changed this now?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, that's a good question for us to ask. Could you talk about how you did this report and got this thorough analysis through all the grief? And as I was watching the video, I was thinking about the hard work of your staff, and I was thinking about the grief of the families, and I was thinking about how every single day they had to come to work, your staff, feeling that weight of what had happened to these families and then still do their jobs. How many staff contributed to this investigation? How many hours? And what is the funding status for NTSB? And you can put it in writing later if you don't have it exactly.
It's probably about 50 or 60 staff. I mean, we're only about 415 right now. It's significant. How were we able to do this? The people behind me. I can only advocate like I do and know the facts that I do and do a good job because of them. We are a team. And they put together they gathered 19,000 pages of evidence. It's my duty to read every single word of that evidence because that's our hard work. I mean, it's a lot of work. And while they also have about 15 to 20 other cases, Mr. Shin here, who's behind me, did all the helicopter work, helicopter systems, barometric altimeters, you'll name it, on this investigation. He's also leading the UPS crash as the investigator in charge.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Shin. And
So the personnel, it's been difficult. I mean, it's a difficult year for them, and the shutdown was difficult. It's a strain on all of them, but I have never been more proud of the team than I was on January 27th and every day since I came to the NTSB.
Thank you. I just think the findings and the fact that on a bipartisan basis, the chairman and ranking member have worked on this, as you noted, focused on this, along with Senator Moran and Senator Duckworth. I just don't detect partisanship here when it comes to this. And it is such an example of why we're never going to be able to make things better if we don't get to the bottom of what went wrong. And as I understand already, some changes have been made that you've recommended and must continue to be made, every single one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also add for the chairman, this is the same team behind me that helped me evaluate NDAA before we even did anything. We get together as a group and make decisions as a team.
Thanks.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Chair, it's good to see you again, and I want to thank you as well. You're doing an exceptional job, and your whole team. I want to begin by, of course, expressing my deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of those we lost in the American Airlines Flight 5342 tragedy at DCA. And as you know, Madam Chair, also around the same time we had another airplane crash in Alaska, the Bering Air crash over Norton Sound. 1 year later, these losses remain deeply felt throughout our country, with witnesses here in my state in Alaska, where, as you know, aviation is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. And I want to thank the NTSB for its thorough work, and I appreciate the work you've done on the latest Bering Air crash, that latest crash in Alaska. We are grateful for your commitment. We're grateful for you going up to Alaska so soon after that crash. And aviation safety is particularly important in my state, where communities depend on reliable air service for healthcare, for commerce. We have over 230 communities in my state that are not connected by roads. And so it really matters. So I want to broaden the aperture here. It's been 6 years since the February 2020 NTSB report that found over a 10-year period Alaska's aviation crash rate was almost 2.5 times higher than the national average, and the fatality rate was 1.3, almost 1.4 times higher. That led me and the FAA administrator at the time, Steve Dixon, and you to push for what we now refer to as the Alaska Aviation Safety Initiative, the FASI initiative.
All right, again, that is the latest Senate hearing on the DCA plane crash that happened last January, just over a year ago at this point. And of course, the NTSB continues to investigate the incident and make recommendations for how to make our airspace, our air traffic control, and our airports safer. So we'll continue to monitor that story, of course, as the investigation develops and we continue to learn more about what happened. That's what we have for you today on Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus and YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to take a quick break. Stay here if you'd like to stream our noon show coming up in just a few minutes, or of course it will be live over the air for those of you who live in the area. Have a great day.